Hello everyone, my name is Akshay Pokharkar and I'm working as a business intelligence analyst at Blend 360. In today's session, we are going to look at newly introduced date function in Power BI called as Network Days. This function was recently launched in July 2022. Network days basically helps us to find out the aging days. With network days, we can also exclude weekend and holidays between the start date and the end date. Before July 2022, when this function was not there, we used to write long DEX code for calculating the aging days. And in that also, we exclude weekends and holidays. And for that, we need to write an extra query. Like, for example, for weekend, we have to determine whether the day is weekend, yes or no. It will be a binary variable and so on. But network days had made it easy. So network days basically takes four inputs: start date, end date, weekend, and holiday. It needs minimum two inputs. So we have to provide start date and end date at least, or maximum four inputs, which include all of this. It may happen that if we just provide start date as an input, it will still work, but then it will give us the misleading results. Why? Because if we provide start date and if we do not provide end date, then Power BI will default consider the end date as December 30th, 1899, and we will get misleading results. So as a result, it's a good practice to define both start date as well as end date. If we are unable to find network days function in Power BI, then it may happen that the version of the Power BI which we are using might be before July 2022. So how can we check the version of the Power BI? So all we have to do is open the Power BI desktop and click on Files, click on About, and the second line will tell you what's the version. So you can see here the version which I have is August 2022. So definitely for me, network days function will be working. But if for your case, if it doesn't work, that means you are using older version. So just make sure that you're using version from July 2022. So as we can see here, Power Network Days takes four inputs: start date, end date, weekend, and holidays. Now for holidays and for weekends, we have to provide additional inputs. For example, weekend is usually Saturday and Sunday, but it may happen that for our scenario, we might want to exclude, let's say, for example, Wednesday and Thursday. We do not want to exclude Saturday and Sunday. Instead, we want to exclude Wednesday and Thursday. So we can make use of that. So we just have to define the integer 5 in this calculation. And for holidays, we have to make sure that we have a separate table for holidays, and that has only one column, and that is holiday date. If the holidays table has two columns, then the network days function will not work. Hence, we have to make sure that for holidays, there is only one column, and that is holiday date. So let's start with an example. So these are basically the integers that can be used for weekends, and we can find this numbers, more description about this on the link provided here. And it basically takes us to the Microsoft documentation. So we can see here, so the numbers are defined here. So let's start with an example. So as you can see here, I have imported a sample data. So let me quickly show you what the data looks like. So it's basically, there are two date columns: order date, ship to date. And let me make this date as short date. So we can see here order date and ship to date. One thing we have to notice, in order to use network days, we have to make sure that the date time feature, auto date time feature in Power BI is disabled. So how can we do that? We have to click on File, click on Options and Settings, click on Options, click on Data Load. So here you can see here I have unchecked auto date time, right? So unchecking auto date time ensures that these date columns do not have hierarchy. So we just have to make sure that the auto date time feature is disabled and we do not have the hierarchy. Just for demonstration purpose, let's drag these two variables, two columns onto our table. So what we are going to do now is we are going to create a new measure called as aging days that will be basically the difference between the order date and ship to date. Now, to use network days, we have to provide four inputs, right? It was the start date, end date, weekend, and holiday. So our start date in this case is order date, our end date is ship to date. So let's create a measure. So it will be aging days, let's say excluding Saturday, Sunday is equal to network days. So now we have to define here the start date, which is order date. So let's type order date. So you can see here, I'm unable to get the order date. If I write the table name, which is the sample data here, I'm still not able to do it. That means we have to define variable for this. So let's define variable for this. So variable defining start date, which is equal to selected value, table name, which is sample data, order date. Let's also define end date, which is ship to date. So selected value, sample data, ship to date. We are going to define variable aging days. That will basically calculate the difference between the start date and the end date. And we would also like to exclude any weekends if it is available between start date and end date. So I'm writing here excluding weekend, which is Saturday and Sunday. So now I can find network days function. So our start date, we can select here variable start date, end date, another variable. Then we have to define weekend. So for weekend, if I want Saturday, Sunday, then if I do not write anything, it will consider Saturday, Sunday as the weekend. Or even if I write one, it will still consider Saturday and Sunday. But for now, I'm not going to write anything. So let's leave it like that. Written aging days. And then we can drag this variable, this new measure, onto our field, onto our table. So we can see here, so basically what it does is it calculates the difference between the 2 days and it excludes Saturday and Sunday if it is available between these two dates. Just for example, if we look at the last record, so we have from July 1st to July 10th, and we can see the aging days is 6. So if we look into a calendar, from July 1st to July 10th, so we can see from July 1st to July 10th, there are 2 Saturdays and there are 2 Sundays. So the remaining days are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. As a result, we got 6. But now let's say instead of excluding Saturday and Sunday, I would like to exclude, let's say, Wednesday and Thursday. So then what I'm going to do is, again, create a new measure. This time I'm going to exclude Wednesday and Thursday. Okay. And we have to make sure now we have the weekend number integer which we have seen here, like for Wednesday and Thursday is 5. So we have to make sure we enter it as 5. So let's enter it as 5. Click on OK. And then drag this newly created measure onto our table. So now we can see that for the last record, the aging days is 8 from July 1st to July 10th. Why? Because this time we are telling Power BI to exclude Wednesday and Thursday, which is 6th and 7th. So the remaining days are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. As a result, we got 8. So far we have used start date, end date, and weekend in our network days formula. Now we are going to create another measure. That measure will basically exclude holidays too. So copying the same measure and I'm going to create a new measure that excludes holidays. So for holidays, we have to make sure that we have holidays table. So for example, I do have holiday table, but in this holidays table, I have two columns. So network days function will not work here because we have to make sure that in holiday table there is only one column which is holiday date. So I need to delete this column. So what I can do is I can click on the data. I can click on this holiday table and I can click on copy table and then click on enter data, paste it, call this table, let's say holiday table for network days collection. And we are going to delete holiday name and then click on load. So now you can see here I have created this holiday table, which has only one column, that is holiday date. And this is what we want. So let's come back to this measure again. So here we have to define the table, which is holiday table for network days calculation. So we just have to define the table name that has only the date column. So click on it, click on OK. And then let's drag this measure on our table. So now you can see that the aging days excluding Wednesday, Thursday, and holidays between July 1st and July 10th is showing 7. So if we look into the calendar, so July 1st to July 10th, so we are excluding Wednesday and Thursday. So we are left with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 days. But it is showing 7 days because on July 4th, there was a holiday. It was Independence Day in US. So it got excluded and we got 7 aging days. So I hope you found this session useful and thank you for watching this session and we'll connect back soon.